Hello everyone, welcome to Forza Mechanic 5 for the Android operating system. Today I'll be giving you guys an instructional video on how to use the calculator. I'll be using a desktop version, Windows desktop version, to show you guys as an example because it has a pointed cursor. Alright, let's begin. First select your game version. Okay, then select your vehicle. If your vehicle is not available, don't worry, we'll explain that in the next step. You have tuning type, you have universal or track specific. Anything universal tune related, you do not need to select a vehicle. Anything that's track specific, you have to select a track and a vehicle. So we'll click universal tune. We'll click driveline type, or we'll drive. This is for Forza 5 only. We'll choose Forza 5 here real quick. We'll select medium, and we'll leave it on manual torque bias, and we'll select an environment. Okay. We'll leave the weight there. We'll leave the weight distribution here. And you need to input your tires. You can find them in the tire select screen or the car on the advanced data screen. The arrow on the vehicle and mile ladder Jeep pulls. Okay, ride frequency. Ride frequency basically is how many cycles per second the spring will oscillate. It determines the stiffness of a suspension. When you select the frequency in this drop-down menu right here, you select the frequency of the entire suspension. Basically makes them both even. And I'll show you in a pictograph of what this means. On the add frequency percentage determines what percent stiffer do you want the rear over the front. The math integer here with 1 equals circuit and negative equals drag is 1 equals plus means plus 10% over the front, and negative means 10% subtracted, 10% softer than the front. So this basically means that the rear will be 10% above 1.7. If you click this, this means the rear would be 10% minus 1.7. Okay. In typical standards, with ride frequency and we'll input a time here. The time is not required for universal, but it's required for track specific. We'll just input these figures here as a good example. This spring range and this ride height represents a box. What this means is that where it says right here front spring rate minimum, you would go to the tuning screen and put the minimum amount of tuning for the spring rate and the maximum amount of tuning. Maximum spring rate and the minimum spring rate. What this does, the same goes for the ride height. You would crank it down and all the way up. Is because the game is not operating in real life how in real life we have an infinite in our within there is no box, whereas in the game there is no infinite. It has a pre-dictated ordained box. How this works is your maximum spring rate determines the top of the box. Your minimum spring rate determines the bottom of the box. And your suspension is basically all parameters are set within this box, front and rear. And why we use, in this depiction here, why we use 10%, or we'll give you an example. We'll set it at, to show you what a 20% would be like in this photograph. The frequency percentage, when you add additional frequency to the rear, the percentage, this flat line right here represents the 1.7, and this additional add percentage is represented by this adjacent line, and this is the hypotenuse. What this means is here's your wedge. This is the artificial wedge you put in the vehicles because under acceleration the rear of the car wants to squat and the front wants to lift, causing only 3 wheels to be on the ground during a corner. Sometimes even worse. When you increase the add percent frequencies to prevent the rear from squatting and allowing the car to be more level in the middle of a corner. The ball here represents weight and weight transfer. As you can see, the ball placed on the top will roll downhill down the hypotenuse, which will tell you that the weight is being transferred to the front. when the vehicle is static, when it's not moving, standing still. When you increase the wedge into the vehicle, the amount of wedge, as you can see, the yellow line represents an average between the maximum here and the minimum, is that when you tune this, what it does is that when you increase the rear stiffer than the front bump goes up and the front rebound goes down, so it promotes more lift in the front and allows it to transfer more weight to the rear, and the bump will help prevent the front from compressing and bottoming out due to the weight transfer being transferred to the front. A layman's term of trying to explain this would be is that the add percentage is also as a oversteer and understeer slider. If you want more oversteer, you can increase it. If you want more understeer, you can decrease it. With the drag racing, it's the same thing. It's just a reverse wedge. The triangle's in the opposite direction, and the ball's the weight going the opposite set direction. The rear springs will be really, really soft and have a relatively high bump, low rebound, and the front will have relatively high rebound, low bump, allowing the front to transfer more weight to the rear. Now, on the track-specific tuning, what it does is it takes the average speed of the track, the speed that you're going around a track, and also by the vehicle's wheelbase length, it'll automatically determine the wedge, the amount of wedge required for the average speed you're going around the track. And the reason why that, and this will not work on every track. It's something you should not take if you plan on taking the car to multiple tracks. It's really for a hot lap or something that's track specific, and even then, it's not the end all be all. It really is a starting point to help take the guesswork out if you're a hot lapper. The wedge also determines your anti-roll bar stiffness. People mistake an anti-roll bar as just controlling fore and aft. It's actually just there to control roll, and people think that it helps prevent the vehicle from rolling in a set direction when really all it does is lift up the other side to help it prevent it from leaning into a corner. And when you lift up the other side of the wheel, you cause it to understeer. Basically, as you're trying to use the anti-sway bar to compensate for a softer suspension. When you increase spring rate, the bump goes down, the rebound goes up, and the anti-roll bar goes down. When you decrease the spring rate, when you soften it, the anti-roll bar goes up, the bump goes up. Okay. Typical industry standards for a universal tune are 10, 12.5, 15, and 20%. Obviously, as you increase your wedge too much, where the rear of the vehicle does not compress, you lose all mechanical grip. That only makes sense to use anything above a 15% as if you're running a vehicle that has very high downforce. Like Formula 1 cars are no stranger to above 25%. Formula 1 cars are definitely no stranger to above over 25%. That's because they're producing, well over 1,000 pounds of downforce. So think of it more as understeer, oversteer. You want more oversteer, increase. You want more understeer, decrease. It basically works as a slider. For those who want to understand it more, is if you have your frequencies even, you go over a speed bump, when the front goes over and then the rear goes over, you have a teetering effect where the car will rock back and forth fore and aft. If you introduce some wedge into the vehicle, albeit 0.5% or so, you can prevent the vehicle from oscillating back and forth. You're creating a small wedge into the suspension. Okay. And the cam and peg system, the cam and ramp angles, Salisbury differential, basically represents there's two clutches on each side of the ramps, and then when the cam opens the under acceleration and deacceleration, opens the ramps and compresses the clutches against the housing, aka locking the differential. The ramp angles do not represent the lock percentage. If you want the lock percentage, albeit you use the manual setting here or the auto Salisbury, the corner symptom diagnosis, or the manual torque bias, or any of these other differentials, if you want the output to be shown in the output section down here under differential, you must select which one you want from this drop-down menu. So a good example, if I click manual Salisbury, and I go down, it tells me it's 50-50 because 45 divided by 90 is 50. This is a good example. 45 degrees on X cell, 90 on D cell. 45-degree ramp, spread and open, compressing the clutches against the housing on acceleration. 90 degrees flat, under deceleration it will not open, which means it will only lock under acceleration, not on deceleration. You can use these settings as shown in the photograph to tune, or I can give you a list of other ones, or you can contact me. I can give you a list for Porsches or several real-life ramp angles for various race teams. You can contact me via the email provided on Google Play, or you can contact me on Twitter or Facebook. All right. Hopefully I helped you guys out. I forgot one more thing on the torque bias and the manual torque bias. You can click a drop-down menu in here. Basically, what torque bias ratio is that how many times the outside wheel spins to the inside's 1, and it'll give you a percent lock in accordance. But you must select which type of differential you want to use. We have 4 different types of differentials in this calculator. All right. Thank you, and good luck.